completely overrun by social justice warriors.
I need your help.
A huge thank you to those who have supported and made this project possible.
Lauren Southern, Faith Goldie, Milo Yiannopoulos, Alex Jones, they're all big stars on social media. But here's the question. Are people using hate to make money online? And is cutting off access the solution? This past week, the controversial Canadian commentator Faith Goldie was kicked off Facebook, deplatformed for spreading what Facebook deemed dangerous far-right content. The PR was great for Facebook, but what didn't get covered? Well, until recently, Facebook was actually offering up white genocide conspiracy theorists as a special category for advertisers to target. The company has since apologized. And now the federal government says it might step in to regulate not just Facebook, but all social media platforms. Let's take a look at the challenge here. First, why does it matter? Well, the New Zealand mosque shooter's manifesto was littered with references to internet culture. He also live streamed the shooting on Facebook. He even name-dropped a YouTube star before he killed 50 people. In Quebec City, the mosque shooter obsessively checked the Twitter accounts of anti-Muslim commentators in the months leading up to the attack. But can views like these actually be shut down? This week, the U.S. Congress tried to have a serious debate about how to limit the rise of white nationalism online. And it got hijacked by white nationalists online.
The Second World War is not an argument against white identity in 2019.
No. Come on, get with the times.
A YouTube account called Red Ice TV streamed the hearing in real time. Viewers used a feature called Super Chat that can make big money. And some people watching this stream paid hundreds of dollars to pin hateful comments and white nationalist memes, so many that YouTube eventually shut it down. And one of the right-wing Super Chat pioneers is Toronto's Andy Worski. He makes thousands of dollars through a debate, a series that he calls blood sports, kind of like WWE meets a call-in show. And Worski's show isn't a one-off. Look what happens when you watch one of his videos. Up pops a bunch of similar YouTubers, all promoting themselves as right-wing truth-tellers, revealing what the mainstream media is hiding. After one click, days later, a stream of Worski-like channels is still automatically appearing on our feed. So what role does YouTube play in all of this?
With you, girl.
Canadian pop icon Justin Bieber started out on YouTube, and look at him now. In many ways, it is a no-brainer. YouTube can make you rich and famous. How? Well, you can develop a community that can be built into a money-making empire. Faith Goldie's doing it.
The European is a rare beauty, growing nearer to extinction by the day.
The self-described Christian Canadian nationalist started out working as a commentator on Sun News. Then she moved to Rebel Media. She got fired after she went down to report on that Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville and later spoke on a neo-Nazi podcast. Faith Goldie can no longer earn money on YouTube, but her videos still play. It still helps her funnel her fans to her website and other platforms where she can make money, like crowdfunding sites like Subscribestar. For example, for $100 a month, Faith Goldie will call you personally. For $250, you can even join her on a live stream broadcast. Then there's Lauren Southern.
Do you know what Sharia is?
Yeah, Sharia law.
What is Sharia?
Cut off your hand if you steal.
Wrong.
Another Canadian, another former Rebel Media star, who was recently banned from the UK for distributing what the government called racist material. But she's still hot on YouTube with her new documentary.
I was regularly sent images and videos claiming there was a white genocide. There is never smoke without fire.
The doc has been viewed 2.2 million times. And how'd she raise the money to film it? Well, she drummed up over $31,000 on her website through donations. Then there's another Canadian export, the self-described libertarian philosopher Stéphane Molyneux. Molyneux hosts white advocates like this on his YouTube channel.
My notions about race, this notion that all races are basically the same, began to crumble.
He has almost 1 million subscribers who he encourages to buy his books and listen to his podcasts, which he says have been downloaded over 500 million times. And of course, at the end of every podcast, he asks for donations. Many of those YouTube videos, including some of Faith Goldie's, are not eligible to run ads, which means they don't make money. YouTube only boots people off completely, though, for promoting violence. Alex Jones, the U.S. conspiracy theorist who helped push that fake Pizzagate story, is the biggest star to get banned from the platform, but he's hardly disappeared. Here he is as a guest on one of Logan Paul's YouTube channels, where there's over 1 million subscribers.
Just bring over the big man.
No, hold on.
He left.
Well, here's why this is interesting.
He smelled like.
Because, like, yo,
gotcha.
Yo,
I've never seen someone that stoned.
Your energy is crazy. It's awesome.
Joining me to talk about this is BuzzFeed reporter Jane Litvinenko. She tracks disinformation online with a particular focus on social media. How much are we talking about here? I know you don't know exactly how much money people make, but how much money are these white nationalists making?
Look, it's difficult to say, and there's a few different sources of income that people can have on YouTube. One is advertisement, and that has been really dwindling as YouTube is grappling with bad content that advertisers just don't want to associate with. But there's also super chats where the fans of the personalities themselves can hand over money, and just fundraising campaigns to point to. So when that all comes together, really we don't know how profitable this is. But the most popular YouTubers have built houses on this. They've built their entire lives on this.
So if somebody like Faith Goldie, Alex Jones, if someone gets kicked off of one of these platforms, do they stop making money?
No, the money doesn't stop just because the YouTube monetization stops. What happens is a lot of them are able to say, give me money because YouTube has kicked me off. They're able to go to either their personal websites or any other remaining social media networks that host them and rally their base based on that.
So we've all heard about how to get people to stay on YouTube or on Facebook for that matter, that fear and anger drives people to get them to stay on longer. But now also YouTube has this algorithm that says if you go too far, you get kicked off. So are people trying to figure out where the line is about how far they can go?
Yeah, it's been really tricky with social media networks to sort of straddle that line between what is hate speech and what isn't. Because a lot of the time, something that is explicitly hate speech can be said in coded words or sort of veiled language to mean essentially the same thing, but that would pass YouTube censors. So what we're seeing with a lot of these hateful groups and white nationalists, white supremacists on YouTube is they will use that coded language to try to get around the algorithm or try to get in line with the community guidelines that YouTube has set.
Is it fair to say that white nationalism is being partly online, is being partly driven by money?
White nationalism is built on anger, and anger makes money online. So when we ask whether white nationalism is driven through finances, I think it's fair to say that it could be. It could be, financials could be a motivator for white nationalists. And the other piece of this puzzle is that no channel gets 100% of its advertising revenue. No super chat gets 100% of its revenue. YouTube takes a cut as well. And so there's financial incentives for all the parties involved.
From what we've seen, it looks like a lot of people are making a lot of money on these social platforms, spreading very questionable views. What ideas play the best? If you want to raise your viewership, what ideas are known to play?
I don't want to give an instruction manual here, but with disinformation in general, what we see is there's a swell around news events and a swell around the latest political commentary. So what seems to be the strategy is to use extremely incendiary language to rally your base, to get that anger out of people and essentially get them to act emotionally. And that seems to work across all social media networks, not just YouTube.
Jane Litvinenko, thank you so much for talking to me.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Joining me from Ottawa is John Robertson. He's a columnist with the National Post and a radio commentator. So, John, it looks as if both the American and the Canadian governments are considering regulating these big platforms like YouTube and Facebook. What do you think of that idea?
This is where I think we get into very dangerous territory. Obviously, there are some limits imposed by government on free speech. I mean, you can't conspire to overthrow the state. You can't plot a murder. There are things you can't do. You can't shout fire in a crowded theater. But to give government power beyond that, I think is a terrible idea for two reasons. The first of which is, of course, that if you trust government to silence speech it doesn't like, it will start silencing speech critical of it. We've even seen Justin Trudeau has been claiming that Andrew Scheer is somehow soft on white nationalism and white supremacy. So, presumably in the name of public safety, we're going to have to silence that guy too. But the other more fundamental problem is that censorship cuts the rattle off the snake. It doesn't cut off the fangs.
But
I'm a great believer.
Is there a concern? Is there a concern though here? I mean, at what point do you allow the cesspool to keep getting larger? Because there are things I'm sure you would acknowledge on YouTube and Facebook that are offensive. Where's the line here between censorship and banning actual hate speech?
Well, I think that banning hate speech is censorship. I would not allow people to conspire to commit acts of violence or to advocate violence that creates a clear and present danger. But other than that, if you censor it, you're not doing anything about the cesspit except you're hiding it. That's the point about censorship cutting off the rattle. If there are dangerous ideas out there, you want to use it's called the Dracula effect, that sunlight destroys evil. You want to bring them out in the open, you want to expose them, you want to refute them, you want to show what pathetic people the haters are, and you want to defeat these ideas.
For traditional media, some people call it old media, there were lots of rules. There's the Broadcasting Act, journalistic standards, and so on. There's no rules on social media.
Well, there's one thing I think should be changed. The American Communications Decency Act exempts these online platforms for responsibility for what gets posted. Whereas, as you know, on a newspaper or on a television station, if someone says something libelous, you share responsibility and you can get sued. And I think that should be changed. Now, that would destroy their business model, but that's their problem, not mine. I don't need Twitter, and I don't need a photograph of somebody's breakfast. I don't need Colin's Key on YouTube. But apart from that, there should be no prohibition on speech unless it's seditious or incitement to violence in the short run or other things that are actively criminal.
We know that some of these people who have gone on to shoot up other people, that they have been radicalized, self-radicalized online. So this stuff is having an impact. So how do you protect legitimate conservative views or debate, but stop that?
Well, again, I'm not in favor of censoring hate speech. I'm in favor of combating it and defeating it, because surely
but do you
the
think
argument
that's
is not.
working?
Well, I don't think it is working yet. We have rather extensive hate speech laws and so on. But again, the problem is it fundamentally comes down to the human heart. If Canadians are consuming hate speech, just like internet porn, the problem with internet porn is that people are watching it, not that people are providing it. And if we are so far gone that we want this stuff, we'll find a way to get it. But, you look even at Weimar Germany, where the Nazi Party rose to power. It's back to the reductio ad Hitlerum. But they had extensive laws about what could and couldn't be said, and it didn't stop evil from triumphing. What stops evil from triumphing is exposing it when it appears and not letting it into our own hearts. I mean, look at people's Twitter feeds. How on earth did everybody get so angry? We need to fix the problem, because if we can't stop ourselves online, we're not going to be able to stop ourselves when we vote either. We can't delegate decency to the government and say, don't let me say bad things, don't let me hear bad things. I'm an adult, and so are you.